Hey everybody, we're here today to talk about some Aoto stones. We can see that we have two different ones that we're going to go ahead and take a look at. And these two stones do a pretty good job of showing the range that Aoto stones can cover regarding Japanese natural stones. So we have a muddy one right here, and we have a coarse one right here. We'll talk about the similarities and differences as well as the history of these two stones. While I do so, I'll just go ahead and show you maybe some close-ups of the stones, and we'll work our knife here a little bit on both of them so that you can get an idea of the type of polish they would leave, the feedback that they offer, and the differences between the types of Aotos out there that you might find and you may want to purchase for yourself or use in some circumstance. So these both come from the same regions. They're both from the Tanba region. That is usually, when you're talking about the region, spelled with an N, Tanba. It is named after a family name, though, which is Tanba, so typically spelled with a M, Tamba. With many Japanese words, the translation doesn't quite come over perfectly, and often you will see M's and N's switched around depending on the use of the word. So there's a large region, if you look on a map, at Kyoto, to the northwest of the city, you would find a region called Tanba, or has Tanba in the name, and there's that whole geographic area is named after it, even beyond Japanese natural stones. So you could very easily find a rough outline of it on Google Maps or something. Additionally, on naturalwhestones.com, you can find a map of the different mines and where they're situated right outside of Kyoto to give you an idea. It doesn't have every mine on the map, but it has many of them, Tanba being one of them. So we would consider Tanba a Nishinoyama, or a Western mountain mine. It is all relative to, of course, where they're located. They're all, the grouping of mines outside of Kyoto is all just north of Kyoto. But relative to the major groupings, it is one of the Western mines over by Ohira, Shinden, Bukunaman, those other Western mines. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at our first one here. This is one of our muddy Aotos. And the term, which I'm going to zoom this up here, the term Aoto, or Aoto, is, it means blue stone. Ao is blue, and then to is stone. So we can take a look at this one. This stone is a Tamamoku stone. You can see the different strata layerings of the stone. It's all the same strata, but you can see the different layerings of the sediment that have built up. Many Aoto stones are what we call potato stones, which means you don't get to see this. I really like Aoto stones that have this pattern on it. I think they wear slower, beneficially slower for us. And I find that stones that are Tamamoku, whether they're Aoto stones or not, are far more consistent, just because you're going to get the same layer through the entire stone. You already have an idea of what's to come, even towards the end of the stone. So anyway, hopefully the camera is going to do a good job here of showing the surface of this, but of course it's going to be a little bit hard to see. It is a rougher surface. This Aoto is definitely a Nakatoishi, a middle grit stone. We would probably consider it analogous to a 2,000 to 3,000 grit stone. Depending on how you use it, it could even be a little lower than that, or you might get a more refined edge based off of how you use it. So with these muddy or soft Aotos, which are far more common in the marketplace, the common Aoto you're gonna find is this type of a stone would run you $100, maybe less, maybe a little bit more, depending on what you find. If you buy it off Bai, which is a website that does Japanese auction, the Yahoo Japanese auctions for the Western countries, you can definitely get them for below 100. If you're going to buy from a U.S. vendor, it might be over 100 in that case. But anyway, This is the most common Aoto. It's going to be fairly coarse, very easy to use. It's going to self-muddy very quickly on its own. We'll see that in a little bit here. And they're very firmly a middle grit stone. We also have this Aoto, which it's a big stone. It was definitely a sword stone at some point in its life here, but let's go ahead and get the camera to take a look. And hopefully you guys can see that it is a fairly dramatic difference. In the surface, this is a much smoother stone, and it is a Aoto from a particular mine from the Tanba region. They're still from the same geographic area, but there's one particular type of Aoto or mine called Kouzaki, or Kouzaki, can be pronounced either way, or I've heard it pronounced both ways. And they're known for having these very hard, very fine Aoto stones. Not every Kouzaki Aoto is like this. And unfortunately, all Kouzaki Aotos are marked up because of the name. So you really have to take a look, try to ask for some details from the vendor before you drop a bunch of money on a Kouzaki Aoto. That's going to be just like this one, which really, in the end, isn't going to provide you much in the way of the unique experience or the benefits that a Kouzaki Aoto is supposed to bring. This stone is, not a Nakatoishi. It is still an Aoto, but unlike most of them, this one is functionally an Awaseido. It's going to be a finishing stone. It is most definitely even hard enough and fine enough to do razors or really keen, raw protein edges with a knife off of it. I do finish, it's not the only stone I use to do this, but I do finish straight razors with this stone. They come out very, very nice, comparable to a, very fine 5+ Nakayama or other type of stone that everybody loves to finish razors on. So they are, kind of at the ends of the spectrum. But really with Aotos, there's not really much in between. You don't typically get, this and then a couple in between and then this type of Aoto. It's really a black or white situation. You either get the muddy version or you get this one. Of course, I'm sure somewhere in existence there has been a more in between Aoto, but they're extremely uncommon. And granted, my sample size is 15 stones probably, or something like that. And out of all of those, the vast, 12 of them were like this style. Not all of them the Tamamoku ones, but mostly potato stones, where they're all just uniform composition. And then 3 of them were like this Kouzaki Aoto, and I kept the one that I liked the most myself. So we can see some of the differences already. I'll try to get them up at about the same level in just how they look. If you compare a little bit more, I'm not doing a very good job of this, am I? Okay, here we go. If we compare a little bit more, you can see that they look very different. The inclusions, not that they're toxic, but or anything, they're not going to cause a problem, but just the patterns that are within each stone are very different. I'll go ahead and wet them here, and we'll see an even larger difference. So with the Kouzaki Aotos, that, again, not all Kouzaki Aotos, but the ones that Kouzaki is known for, that are these really hard, really fine stones, you can see how different they look. This one's going to have almost like a Nashiji pattern, it like a brown dots in it, versus this one is going to have these black, more Goma-esque, dark blue dots. And you can see wet, they look very different. This one sucks up water significantly faster than the Kouzaki does, which lends, of course, to its hardness and its fineness. It's not going to pull in that water very readily, versus this one, it's going to drink all that water up here real quick. So it should be really apparent when you look at these 2 different stones on listings which one you're dealing with, and of course you just got to ask for a little bit more information from them, and you can pretty much 100% verify what you're looking at. Other than that, I have also noticed with some Kouzaki Aotos, and I've never seen this on a non-Kouzaki Aoto. Let's see if I can get it. So you're looking at that white dot right there. Let's go ahead and... So you might not be able to see it all that well, but this is actually in the stone. It's not like a scratch. It's not a divot, you know, it's not a dent with old slurry or anything in it. It is a little white, you know, inclusion in the stone. Causes no problems. You can't feel it with your finger, and it doesn't cause any issues at all. But I've seen it on a couple of them, on at least 2 of the 3 I had handled so far. They have those little white dots sometimes in them too. So we can go ahead and just get it wet here so you guys can see better what the stone looks like. And then we'll do that with this other one as well, assuming that the water will stay, because it's gonna drink it up real fast. So yeah, they look pretty different, and you'll see a lot more that look like this. This one is a little bit red and a little blue. That's not uncommon. You will see ones that are, you know, a little bit more blue, except still very soft, but they're not, you're really not going to mistake them. You know, once you look at the differences in these stones in this video, and then you look at whatever you find out there, you know, you should be well equipped to be able to tell the difference. And they also are going to be very different in price. These stones, you know, a stone that are usually they're not this big, and usually they are the size for razors because that's what most people use them for. They're going to be like, you know, usually you'll find them for that thick, and then that long, or ooh, we can't see everything, can you? That long, maybe. So they'll definitely be smaller, and even that smaller size Kouzaki Aoto might go for, you know, above 250 or something. So typically the price will be in line with it's a rare stone. It can certainly do a better job. A lot of Nakatoishis can do what standard muddy Aoto can do, and obviously we use synthetics a lot more in this range versus this stone can do a lot more of like what we really look for in those finishing Japanese stones. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a look. I'm actually, typically I wouldn't use a Atoma 1200 grit, so you know, analogous to that 1200 sandpaper grit, but with diamond plates. I usually wouldn't use that on this because it's a coarse stone already, or you know, a middle grit stone. It's not going to need the 1200, but I'm going to do it just to show the difference in mud. So you can see I barely even have to touch that one, and we've got plenty of the mud that has been made. I'm just going to wash it off real quick, and then I'll show you this other one, this our Kouzaki Aoto. So obviously we can see that it's gone. So the first thing we can obviously notice here is how much longer it takes me to get results. So it's a hard stone. Alright. And now that we have our results up, just get some of that off, we can see that they look, right? They look very different. Hopefully you can see that. It's hard to tell on the screen. There we go. So you can see it's white, you know. It has a whiter color to it. This is the real muddy, dirty color, which they both have their purpose. We can use both stones very well and very easily, but they fulfill very different roles. Really, the only similarity, of course, is the geographic region and the names that they share. So let's go ahead and take a look at each of these. And we'll just use it a little bit real quick. We're going to put the big end to the side. And first I'll just do a little bit of sharpening so you can just hear it. Hopefully you can hear it. I'll try to get a little closer. to me, it has a coarse, right? It has a coarse sound, as you would expect. It's a very usable grit. I mean, I've definitely suggested to people that this, if they don't want a super refined edge, if they like toothy edges on their knives, and they're looking for something that's kind of like no nonsense, easy to use, one stone does all my knife sharpening, this is a very good contender. It's very price efficient, and it will slurry on its own. So if I just get, let's go ahead and get that slurry off, right? So there's none left. Our knife is no slurry. And if I just start going, I'm not even really putting that much pressure. And you can see that, you know, we've already gotten it. So it doesn't really need to be serviced very often. Of course, it needs to be flattened now and again. But truth be told, some people will just flatten these stones by putting them upside down on some concrete or you know, other slate type surface. I would not personally do that, but you know, whatever works for them. So the next is we'll go ahead and just do a quick polish with it. This will not be a super great job. We're just looking to get a rough idea. I mean, the knife is already not in great quality here. It's just a beater knife I use. So let's go ahead and just take a look. And similarly, we can see that that mud comes up real easily. So let's go ahead and get the camera to well, hopefully you guys can see that. It does an okay job. It's always very scratchy on the soft cladding, which could be better. It's not a stone I would get for polishing. It can do it, but that scratchiness just puts it at such a lower grit that, you know, I would consider different stones that can probably do the polishing job better. This can work if you want to use this. They're very easy to use. They're they're smooth to use polishing wise, and obviously the muddiness of them helps quite a bit. But I think there are better options. I would look at like an Ikarashi or something like that to get the same type of job done, right? Could go like a Binsui to an Ikarashi and then avoid the Aoto for polishing. But I think in many ways, this will cut much faster on the edge of your knife for sharpening purposes over an Ikarashi, and it'll be finer than a Binsui for that purpose too. So it can really shine in that area, and this is very popular for woodworking tools that just need to be good enough. So I realized when editing the other video that this section was out of focus, so I'm going to go ahead and re-record it, and I'll edit it into the original longer video. What I wanted to show was not just the standard way of using the Aoto, which will create a medium edge on your knife. It'll have a fairly toothy finish. It'll still, of course, work just fine, but many people prefer a little bit more of a polished edge to their knife with a toothiness that you can feel on the finger, but something that's not overly unrefined, if you want to call it that. So what we can do, and this is, you probably can do it with some other types of Japanese natural stones, but Aotos lend themselves very well to doing this. And it's one of the items, or sorry, it's one of the methods that make the Aoto such a great all-arounder stone, where maybe it lacks a little bit more of that refinedness of other stones, but it really can do a large range of different tools or different knives for you, so long as you're not really at that high end of trying to cut sashimi or razor type work. So in this case, what we can do is we can just go ahead and wet the top of our stone, and just to demonstrate that it's not hard and how you do it, I'm going to make sure that all the old slurry is off, which we're we're clean. So in this case, we're just going to go ahead and sharpen the knife like we normally would. As we saw before, it's going to give up plenty of slurry for us to use, which is what we want. In this case, if we wanted the stone to be a pretty coarse stone, we would be refreshing the water and kind of continuing to generate new slurry, or as we felt like the slurry was drying out, we might add more water, which will push it out of the way and pull up more slurry with the knife edge. But in this case, because we want to do this finer method of sharpening with the Aoto, we're going to go ahead and try to keep the slurry on the stone as much as possible. And what we're actually shooting for here is for the slurry to begin drying out. And because the slurry on these Aotos are thick and plentiful, it results in a nice surface coating of partially wet clay-like slurry on the top, which we can see it's starting to happen. And it still has, of course, the abrasive grit in it, but the dry layer becomes much smoother. So in this case, as we see the water is starting to dry up, you really want to light up on the pressure of the blade. And we're now starting to treat it like it's finishing. So whereas before maybe you were taking a pulse, now you're just gently touching the edge. And you don't want to do this for too long. You don't want the slurry to actually become fully dry, so it is a little bit of a balancing technique between it drying and actually being dry. So you can see now it's starting to dry up here. So we can just do a quick once over, and it'll look dry. It'll stop being it'll stop moving around, but because the Aoto stone's slurry is again very, very thick and very clay-like, you do get a moment where it's not going to kick up dust, and it'll still help you refine that edge. Now your knife has to be pretty much ready to be finished when you hit this stage, because you're really not going to be removing a ton of metal in this method, but it will bump up the keenness on your knife edge over a standard, the wet Aoto sharpening. And this is where I think these stones really come in for being a really nice, versatile all-arounder stone. And if you're someone who's not going to do knives, you're not going to do, sashimi, you're not going to do razors, and you're not going to do sashimi, or chisels or something like that. This type of all-around stone could be a really good first purchase, and allow you to use the heavy water technique, where it's just a bunch of water, and this lighter technique to be able to finish your knife up on a good edge. And hopefully you guys can hear the difference in feedback. It definitely feels different and sounds different in person. Yeah, and we get a much more refined edge using this technique than we would if we just kept adding more and more water. But again, I do want to stress that you don't want it to get too dry. Stone dust is not good for the lungs, and along with that dust will be potentially particles of your knife. So this is dry slurry over here. And what I'll do is I'll let this actually dry out for just the next, 30 seconds. And you can even see on the blade that it's really starting to get dry. So I'm just going to get that off. You're not really in any major danger because it's not going to flake off and fly into the air with ease. It is still a heavy dust and residue, but it's still best to be mindful of it, and if you don't have to, don't let it, don't work on very dry, slurry surface like that for any period of time. If you can avoid it, it's better just to add that little bit of water. So you can see this is now becoming dry. You can see that this part is dried up, and it's gonna keep going. It'll creep into the middle. So typically what I would do in that case, if I wanted to keep going, is I just take my spray bottle, holding it maybe 1.5 feet away. You spray once, and that will be enough to kind of bring us back. You can work it with your finger if you want. So I think that is a good example of where these muddy altos excel. Again, I would probably avoid the, I really hope you guys can see it. I would avoid the polishing. It gets a little scratchy. Again, it's doable, but why do it if you're going to go down that path? If you're interested in knife polishing, you're probably going to be getting a stone progression, and at that point, you're already investing a little bit more. This would be skippable. But if you were just doing like fishing knives, right, or some knife that you thought was going to be a little bit more beat up, or if you were doing like a standard kitchen knife and you're not cutting raw meat, you're just, you need something that blasts through vegetables, can do some chicken now and then, and you're not, gonna buy a million stones, you're just looking for one really nice Japanese natural stone that doesn't break the bank. This is a really great one. And even though it muds up like we saw, this stone, that thickness, it's gonna last you the rest of your life. We might have used, 1/3000th of the stone today. And of course I was generating mud with a diamond plate at a level I didn't really need for the job I did, right? If I'd let it just come up naturally, we would have not even used as much of that mud. So now let's go ahead and take a look at our Kouzaki Aoto. These are, you can find these still. They're they tend to be a little bit harder. You might have to contact somebody on the reputable vendor list, which you can find on naturalwhestones.com. And on there's a list of different vendors who will help you by getting they'll help you track down the stone you want. If they have those resources, they will give you much more in-depth information about the stone, so that you know what type of stone you're getting. Like in this case, between a softer, harder alto. They should supply you pictures and whatnot. There's another page on the site, which is linked to in the reputable vendor section, that tells you, hey, these are all the things you should probably be looking for from a vendor. You want this type of picture, you want this type of information, and if you're new to this, which if you're watching this video, you probably are newer to Japanese stones. Altos are pretty known already by most people who've been doing this for a while. Of course, there is a primer. There's just Japanese natural stones, the JNAT section on the website, and that will help you get down all the things like names, hardnesses, relative grit ratings, and whatnot. So even though I really don't like doing it, this is I think I already had said it, it's like a 2,000 to 3,000 analogous. We really shouldn't. There's no way to quantify that, but it has a similar use to it based on what it did to our knife, which is why we call it that analogous. This one, the Kouzaki Aotos, especially really hard ones and really fine ones like this, can be kind of a contentious point amongst the community. I've resorted to just calling them 6,000 plus. I would use this stone though like a hard Awasedo. So like you would use a 10,000 to 12,000 grit synthetic stone. Whether or not it is, of course, everybody would have to use this individual stone. I would be tempted to say yes. I think that the type of edge it leaves on a razor is pretty darn close to it. And it is very nice to sharpen on. I will say it's not my favorite stone to polish on. It's very hard. It's a very hard stone. And you have to polish on it very delicately, and it isn't, to me, it's not the most enjoyable experience. There are other harder stones that will leave a better, more detailed finish if I really wanted to. But anyway, let's go ahead and just take a look at it. Let's go ahead and use it. Hopefully I have this in focus. Sorry, I could let the camera do it on its own, but it always goes a little crazy, so I prefer to do it myself. So you should be able to hear it. And the feedback is obviously very different. The sound is pretty considerably different. It's a very smooth stone. It's very nice to use. And you can already tell, if we're comparing mud levels, they're not even comparable, really, right? That's the same amount of mud as we generated with the diamond plate. And I mean, I'm just messing around here, trying to give you guys something to look at a little bit. But the edge is going to come off significantly keener on this stone, for sure. So, yeah, let's go ahead and try to get a little bit of polish out of it. Really hard stones like this, you definitely want to try to get a little bit of slurry on the stone so that it acts kind of like some lubricant. Otherwise, you're definitely going to scratch it. And you could use a Nagura for this, a stone that you rub on the surface of this one to generate like a good, good amount of slurry. Much easier than what we just did there, but in this case, I am just looking for it to be the slurry from the Aoto. And you can't just jump from a coarse stone like our first, just kind of default Tanba Aoto to a fine one like this and expect the scratches to be gone. It's not going to be the case. So we're probably going to see those scratches still. However, we'll notice, a bigger difference in the steel, the core steel and the soft cladding. So we're just kind of messing around here a little bit. So if we take a look at that now, where's the camera at? I don't know how much you'll be able to tell on the camera, but if we keep going, we'll start getting reflections in this. It's a slow cutting, it's a slow polishing stone due to, of course, its hardness is playing a factor in that. And if I had generated a bit more slurry, it might have gone a little faster. But overall, it's a very nice stone to work on. And if I'm going to keep one of them, I'm going to keep this one. But that's, I have use for it. I would use it for knife finishing and razors when I just don't want to use my other ones that can do it. So it's a fun stone. It's big and it's enjoyable to pull out every once in a while. So hopefully that gave you a decent idea of the different Aotos. Truth is, you're usually going to be looking more at these ones if you're finding them from a store. But when these come up, they are certainly a treat. They are very interesting, and I think they're cool to add to your collection if you're looking for an Aoto that maybe has a bit more use in a larger stone collection. I think this is a very utilitarian stone, but it does a very good job at that compared to some other stones out there that are more sensitive or a little bit more fragile. These are definitely user-friendly. I suppose the last thing to cover, which I could have done before, is, this is a Tanba Kouzaki Aoto. This is a Tanba Aoto. This has some other name. There is a mine that this came from. Tanba is a giant region, and there were multiple Aoto mines within the Tanba region, this Kouzaki being one of them. At the end of the day, though, Kouzaki's the one that got the reputation for putting out a lot of these type of stones. Of course, in theory, other mines could have put out these really finer, harder stones. But so many of the Tanba mines put out soft Aoto stones that we don't, they're not sold like Awaseto, where you have, the mine name up front and when possible, right, you delineate every stone based on mine. Most Aotos are just going to be called Tanba Aotos, and that's it. You may find a mine attached to it, but more often than not, if you do find a mine, it's going to just be Kouzaki, and then you as the consumer have to check, is it actually this type of Kouzaki that deserves the higher price tag, or is it this type of Kouzaki and it just has the name? I'm sure it's still good stone, but when you pay for the Kouzaki tag, you should be paying for this. If you're paying more just because it's a Kouzaki, but it's like this, you're getting nothing special, though it'll still work for you, of course. So I think that's pretty much it. I guess we'll be able to just wrap it up here. If you guys have any questions about Aoto stones or anything we covered in the video, I would be happy to talk with you further about it. You can find a contact form on naturalwheightstones.com. I can talk with you over email, or you can leave a YouTube comment. So yeah, thanks for joining me, and until next time, see you later. One last thing. I was about to sign off, but I did think of at least one other thing I wanted to bring up. Regarding these stones, definitely they should be sealed on the sides and the back. Do not ever soak them. They'll fall apart on you. So out of all the types of stones out there, these should be very high on your list for sealing, whether it's cashew lacquer, another type of lacquer, nail polish works. I'll put out a video at some point, I guess, covering the different ways that you can seal the stone. But make sure if you get one of these, you don't soak it, and you use the sealant on the sides and the back so that you only have water ingress from one direction. Otherwise, it's such a soft stone and it sucks up water so readily, you could get a crack at some point. So just be mindful of that. All right, bye.